Afghanistan, a place of breathtaking mountains and brutal history. It's known less for its beauty now, more for decades of war, foreign invasions, and the world's biggest opium trade. Albania, once sealed off like North Korea, now a Balkan underdog with beaches, bunkers, and a mafia reputation that Netflix can't resist. Algeria, vast desert, deep oil wells, and a government that clings to silence. The Sahara is stunning, but freedom of speech? Not so much. Andorra. Tiny Andorra has no army, super low taxes, and more duty-free shops than police officers. Angola. Rich in oil, poor in everything else. A nation rebuilding on top of landmines and luxury malls, sometimes right next to each other. Antigua and Barbuda. Turquoise waters and tax advantages. It's where billionaires anchor their yachts and locals dodge hurricane season. Argentina. Tango, wine, and world-class beef. Also, inflation so wild, economists cry into their empanadas. Armenia. Christianity's oldest home, cradled in the Caucasus. Passionate people, ancient churches, and a history full of scars. Australia. Deadly animals, deadly heat, and deadly slang. But also, beaches, freedom, and a laid-back attitude that's globally envied. Austria. Where Mozart once composed and now everyone skis like it's religion. Clean, cultured, and quietly confident. Azerbaijan. Where oil meets Eurovision, Baku's flashy lights try to distract from a boiling conflict just over the hills. Bahamas. Postcard beaches with real problems under the palm trees. Tourists sip cocktails while locals struggle with inequality. Bahrain. Tiny Gulf state with a big identity crisis. It hosts F1 races but jails dissenters, all under glittering skyscrapers. Bangladesh. Crowded, chaotic, and climate vulnerable. But out of the floods and factories rises resilience. And the best biryani you'll never forget. Barbados. The birthplace of Rihanna. Need we say more? Belarus. Europe's last dictatorship still stuck in a Cold War time loop. Lukashenko runs the show. Protests get silenced fast. Belgium. The capital of bureaucracy and beer. Chocolate, NATO, and 3 governments trying to run one small country. Belize. English-speaking and jungle-rich, it's a Central American country with Caribbean vibes, and one of the world's largest barrier reefs. Benin. Voodoo's spiritual home and one of the most stable corners of West Africa. Ancient kingdoms, modern calm. Bhutan. The country that measures happiness instead of GDP, but don't expect a free pass to visit their peaceful bubble. Bolivia. Altitude sickness, salt flats, and indigenous pride. Politics here are just as dramatic as the landscape. Bosnia and Herzegovina. Sarajevo hosted the 1984 Winter Olympics, less than a decade before war broke out in the exact same streets. Botswana. One of Africa's rare success stories, a stable democracy with low corruption and big diamond money. Brazil. Carnival, corruption, Christ the Redeemer. A nation of extremes where paradise and peril live side by side. Brunei. Ruled by one of the richest monarchs in the world. Oil money, gold-plated everything, and Sharia law. Bulgaria. Ancient ruins, cheap skiing, and a population that's shrinking fast. A Balkan paradox with Soviet shadows. Burkina Faso. One of the world's poorest and most coup-prone countries. But the music scene? Unstoppable. Burundi. By GDP per capita, this is the world's poorest country. No joke, most people live on less than $1 a day. Cape Verde. This tiny island nation off West Africa relies so heavily on remittances from its diaspora, they make up almost 20% of its GDP. Cambodia. Cambodia's Angkor Wat isn't just a religious complex. It's the largest in the world, and it's so iconic, it's literally on the country's flag. Cameroon. Football pride and linguistic divide. A country caught between francophone and anglophone tensions, and nobody's winning. Canada. Vast, cold, and clean. Great healthcare, kind people, but outside the cities, it's you, trees, and maybe a moose. Central African Republic. Technically a country, practically chaos. Militias rule more than the government. One of the poorest and most dangerous places on earth. Chad. Sand, heat, and hardship. Poverty, corruption, and terrorism shape daily life, not a tourist hotspot for a reason. Chile. A thin strip of order in a chaotic continent. From deserts to glaciers, it's stable, proud, and and quietly thriving. China, ancient empire turned surveillance superpower. It builds fast, thinks big, and watches everything. Your phone? Probably made here. Colombia, gorgeous landscapes, legendary coffee, and cities on the rise. But the scars of narco-violence haven't fully healed. Comoros. You've probably never heard of it, and that's fair. Poor, politically unstable, and often forgotten by the world. Congo. Overshadowed by its bigger neighbor, it's rich in oil but not in opportunity. Elites thrive, the rest survive. Congo. A walking contradiction. Vast mineral wealth, brutal poverty, and violence that rarely makes the news. Costa Rica. No army, loads of ecotourism, and the purest pura vida energy you'll find. Feels like nature's favorite child. Côte d'Ivoire. A major cocoa producer, rich in culture and natural beauty, but plagued by political instability and economic challenges. Croatia. Postcard cities, clear seas, and summer festivals. In winter, it's just you, the wind, and half the town gone quiet. Cuba. Revolution meets ration cards. Free healthcare, old cars, and no freedom of speech. Instagrammable and complicated. Cyprus. Technically one island, practically two countries. A Mediterranean beauty stuck in a decades-long identity crisis. Czech Republic. Prague is magic, beer is cheaper than water, and the country quietly thrives while staying off the global radar. Denmark. Windy, wealthy, and well-organized. High taxes buy high happiness. Cold on the outside, but solid where it counts. Djibouti. Blistering heat, military bases, and not much else. France, the US, and China all parked here, because location is everything. Dominica. Jungle-cloaked, volcano-packed island with fewer tourists than neighbors. Raw and rugged, but living here ain't cheap or easy. Dominican Republic. All-inclusives for tourists, rolling blackouts for locals. Beaches shine, but outside the resorts, poverty bites. East Timor. Gained independence in 2002, but half the world still doesn't know it exists. One of Asia's youngest and least understood nations. Ecuador. Where volcanoes kiss the clouds and the jungle hums with life. But under all that beauty, corruption simmers and stability slips. Egypt. Ancient wonders above ground, chaos and traffic below. The past still shines, but the present? Less polished. El Salvador. Bitcoin, beaches, and barbed wire. The murder rate's down, but don't go wandering after dark. Equatorial Guinea. Oil money flows, democracy doesn't. Flashy buildings in Malabo hide one of Africa's most repressive regimes. Eritrea. Africa's North Korea, but with better architecture. Beautiful, isolated, and mysterious as hell. Estonia. The digital utopia. Voted online, filed taxes online, probably born online too. Cold forests, warm tech vibes. Eswatini. The king changed the country's name from Swaziland to Eswatini overnight, on his own birthday. Surprise. Ethiopia. Where time runs 7 years late, and history runs deep. Birthplace of empires, coffee, and contradictions. Fiji. Tropical paradise, bottled for export. But back home, many still drink from rusty taps. Finland. Where people barely talk but nature speaks volumes. Home of saunas, auroras, and some of the world's happiest souls. France. Baguettes, protests, and kisses. Paris is the icon, but the countryside holds the soul. Gabon. Oil-rich elites in shiny SUV and villages with no electricity. Welcome to Inequality, Central Africa Edition. Gambia. Africa's skinniest country, wrapped around a river. Poor, quirky, but full of unexpected charm. Georgia. Where wine was born, mountains rise proud, and hospitality is sacred. But politics? Sharp as the cheese. Germany. Precision, power, and parties that end on time. No speed limits, no forgiveness for the past. Ghana. Loud colors, loud flavors, louder smiles. From Accra's chaos to Cape Coast's calm. Greece. Ancient glory, modern chaos, and sunsets the gods would still kill for, all built on earthquakes and philosophy. Grenada. Smells like nutmeg, feels like peace. But once stared down the US and won. Guatemala. Jungle-wrapped ruins, volcanoes, and Mayan ghosts whispering through the trees. Guinea. Diamonds, bauxite, and a history that's still bleeding. Rough edges, deep soul. Guinea-Bissau. Small, overlooked, and endlessly turbulent. Cashews keep it moving, but stability is always a step behind. Guyana. Caribbean vibes, Amazon depths, and oil riches pouring in. But the poverty never left. Haiti. The first Black republic and the poorest in the Western Hemisphere. A legacy of revolution buried under layers of foreign interference, earthquakes, and chaos. Honduras. Gorgeous beaches hiding behind staggering violence. Gangs run cities more efficiently than the government. Hungary. A nation obsessed with its history, borders, and paprika. Budapest is grand, the politics, not so much. Iceland. More volcanoes than people, and somehow everyone knows a Björk. Stunning, isolated, and proudly weird. India. A billion people in controlled chaos. Rich in culture, temples, and tech, but still haunted by caste, corruption, and cows in traffic. Beautiful and brutal in the same breath. Indonesia. 17,000 islands, thousands of cultures, and still somehow Jakarta floods every damn year. Nature's wild, politics wilder. Iran. Ancient Persia meets modern resistance. A rich civilization buried under strict theocracy, sanctions, and simmering rebellion. Iraq. Cradle of civilization, now better known for war and broken dreams. Oil-rich, yet constantly bleeding. Ireland. Rain, green fields, and Guinness. But behind the charm, famine, exile, and a quiet grudge against the Brits. Israel. Startup nation in a powder keg. Tech innovation, ancient sites, and eternal conflict, all squeezed into one tiny strip of land. Italy. Ruins, pasta, and passion. From Roman emperors to fashion runways, chaos wrapped in charm and espresso. Jamaica. Reggae, weed, and Olympic gold. But also gang wars and a struggling economy. Paradise with an edge. Japan. Robots, temples, and social pressure under cherry blossoms. Clean, polite, and quietly squeezing the soul. Jordan. Peaceful in a messy region, with Petra to attract tourists and neighbors that attract trouble. Kazakhstan. Oil, steppes, and a capital that looks like a futuristic fever dream, still shaking off Borat's shadow. Kenya. Safari dreams and wild beauty, but Nairobi traffic and slums hit harder than any lion. Kiribati. A vanishing dot in the Pacific. Most can't find it on the map. Soon, no one will. Kuwait. Oil-rich silence beneath luxury facades. Malls bloom in the desert while workers sweat in the shadows. Kyrgyzstan. Mountains, yurts, and Soviet leftovers. Beautifully raw but barely holding it all together. Laos. Calm temples and jungle peace, but the bombs left scars. And many still live with barely enough. Latvia. Forests, folk songs, and Soviet shadows. Cold air, cold stairs, and too much space for some. Lebanon. Once glamorous, now gasping for air. Banks collapsed, power flickers, but the food still sings. Lesotho. A kingdom in the clouds, where beauty soars and poverty clings to the slopes. Forgotten by many, frozen in altitude. Liberia. Born from freedom, buried by war. Haunted by its past but stubborn in hope. And louder than you'd expect. Libya. Oil under every dune. Chaos in every city. A nation rich and wrecked, where the future's still negotiating with the past. Liechtenstein. A fairy tale bank account with mountains. No crime, no noise, just alpine silence and suspiciously clean streets. Lithuania. First out the Soviet door, and never looked back. Baltic pride, cold stares, and a love for freedom and basketball. Luxembourg. Smaller than your suburb, richer than your whole country. Built on banks, quiet as a vault. Madagascar. Nature's oddball island. Lemurs, baobabs, and vanishing forests. A dream for tourists, a struggle for locals. Malawi. Africa's warmest smiles, stuck in the cold grip of poverty. Kindness can't fix broken systems. Malaysia. Skyscrapers, spicy noodles, and subtle censorship. Progress shines, but cracks aren't far behind. Maldives. Instagram's wet dream, the ocean's next victim. Cocktails for tourists, rising tides for locals. Mali. Once ruled by Mansa Musa, the richest man in history. Now a land of gold, guns, and government breakdown. Malta. Sunny stone fortress turned offshore vault. EU passport, secret deals, and a mafia whisper in the wind. Marshall Islands. Nuked, forgotten, and reborn as a mailbox paradise. Radiation below, shady businesses above. Mauritania. Slavery officially ended in 1981. Unofficially, it lingers. Sand, silence, and slow change. Mauritius. Indian Ocean beauty with tax tricks under the palm trees. Quiet, clean, and richer than you think. Mexico. Pyramids, pozole, and problems. Culture thrives, but cartels still call the shots. Micronesia. A sea of islands floating on foreign funds. Small, loyal, and strategically placed. Moldova. Wine-soaked, war-worried, and wedged between worlds. The poorest in Europe, but proud. Monaco. Luxury squeezed into 2 square kilometers. No poor, no taxes, no problems. Unless you're broke. Mongolia. Genghis echoes through the steppe. Nomads ride on while cities freeze and grow fast. Montenegro. A postcard with secrets. Mafia yachts, Balkan beauty, and shady citizenships. Morocco. Magic carpets for tourists, harsh reality for many. Souks, surf, and a monarchy that owns it all. Mozambique. Nature gave diamonds and gas but forgot the roads. Blessed on paper, cursed in practice. Myanmar. From hope to horror in just a decade. Golden temples shine, but the guns speak louder. Namibia. Alien deserts, shipwrecks in sand, and German ghosts. Beautiful, barren, bizarre. Nauru. Once the richest per capita, then the phosphate ran dry. Now it rents its name and counts the losses. Nepal. Everest for climbers, hardship for locals, sacred peaks, stagnant economy. Netherlands. Bikes, weed, and perfect order. Liberal on the surface, strict underneath. New Zealand. Middle-earth made real. Breathtaking beauty, polite politics, and sheep that outnumber people. Nicaragua. Volcano boarding and wild landscapes. But thrill fades fast when you hit the walls of censorship and fear. Niger. A furnace on earth. Dust, drought, and resilience. All under the watchful eye of generals. Nigeria. Afrobeats, Nollywood, and Lagos traffic jams. Giant energy, giant chaos, and the lights go out mid-party. North Korea. A black hole on the map. One man smiles, the rest whisper. From space, just darkness. North Macedonia. Renamed to please Greece. Still outside the EU door. But low-key beautiful and proudly Balkan. Norway. Fjords. Oil. And calm perfection. Imagine IKEA with glaciers, trust, and $1 trillion fund. Oman. Oman is calm, collected, and full of desert mystique. It's one of the oldest independent states in the Arab world and avoided the chaos of its neighbors. Pakistan. Mountains that scrape the sky, chai that fuels every street corner, and politics that's louder than the horns in Karachi. Palau. Coral reefs, no military, and they once banned sunscreen to save the ocean. Small but seriously eco-conscious. Panama. Sliced in half by a canal that powers world trade. The skyline screams Miami. The rainforest never really left. Papua New Guinea. Over 800 languages and jungles so thick you can vanish. Civilization and raw nature are in constant tug-of-war. Paraguay. Landlocked, underhyped, and surprisingly wild. Power moves quietly, but everyone knows the boss. Peru. Machu Picchu steals the spotlight, but the Amazon, the Andes, and the ceviche hit just as hard. Philippines. Over 7,000 islands, endless karaoke, and politics that feel like a telenovela. Chaos and charm in equal parts. Poland. Catholic churches, cobblestone streets, and a history that never stops fighting back. Old wounds, new pride. Portugal. Once ruled half the world, now masters of slow living, great wine, and haunting fado. Qatar. Oil-funded opulence, skyscrapers in the sand, and controversial World Cup fame. Money talks loudly here. Romania. Home to the legend of Dracula. Beyond the castles, haunting forests, Orthodox churches, and an economy that's still running from its communist hangover. Russia. Russia spans 11 time zones and has more nukes than any other country. It's big, cold, and powerful enough to shape global headlines with a whisper. Also vodka and ballet. Rwanda. Once torn by genocide, Rwanda is now one of Africa's cleanest, safest, and most tech-friendly countries. Plastic bags? Completely banned. St. Kitts and Nevis. Two tiny islands, one love of citizenship by investment. You might meet more millionaires than locals. St. Lucia. Honeymooners flock here, but behind the resorts is a nation juggling charm and debt. St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Known for pirates and pristine beaches, this island nation served as a backdrop for Pirates of the Caribbean. Samoa. Samoa starts the global day. It's one of the first places to see the sunrise. Time zones are a flex here. San Marino. A medieval mountain microstate inside Italy that acts like it's still running Europe. Oldest republic in the world, and proud of it. Sao Tome and Principe. The kind of island paradise people dream about, but can't find on a map. Cocoa farms, volcanic peaks, and barely any internet. Saudi Arabia. Oil, gold, and skyscrapers in the desert. Mecca brings millions, but so do the Lamborghinis and mega projects that look like sci-fi. Senegal. Senegal is one of Africa's most stable democracies, with buzzing music scenes and baobab trees straight out of The Lion King. Serbia. Serbia is the birthplace of Nikola Tesla. Electric mines, Balkan beats, and a capital that parties like there's no tomorrow. Seychelles. Beach honeymoon capital of the rich and famous. Paradise, if you can afford the entry fee. Sierra Leone. After a brutal civil war, Sierra Leone is rebuilding with resilience and diamonds. Lots of diamonds. Singapore. Singapore is a city-state miracle. Ultra-modern, ultra-clean, and strict enough to fine you for chewing gum. Slovakia. Castles, beer, and mountains that don't make Instagram often, but should. Quietly epic. Slovenia. Looks like Austria and Italy had a baby who loves hiking. Clean, green, and criminally underrated. Solomon Islands. World War II relics are everywhere. Underwater shipwrecks, aircraft, and jungle-covered battlefields. Somalia. Pirates on the news but poets in the streets. A fractured country with an unbreakable culture. South Africa. A rainbow nation stitched with 11 languages and 3 capitals, but old shadows still linger in the light. South Korea. Where your phone is faster than your thoughts. K-pop, kimchi, and a digital life on steroids. South Sudan. The world's newest country, since 2011. Still fighting for peace and identity amid growing pains. Spain. Spain invented the siesta, flamenco, and paella, and gave the world endless reasons to dance and nap. Sri Lanka. Tea plantations, beach escapes, and political chaos that keeps boiling over like a bad pot of curry. Sudan. Home to more pyramids than Egypt, but less peace. Between desert storms and revolutions, history breathes deep here. Suriname. Dutch-speaking and jungle-wrapped. A cultural cocktail of Africans, Indians, Javanese, and oil just waiting to be extracted. Sweden. Sweden gave us IKEA, ABBA, and Spotify. Clean design, pop anthems, and flat-pack furniture. Switzerland. Banks, chocolate, and mountains that look photoshopped. So neutral they'll sell weapons to both sides, politely. Syria. Syria's ancient cities date back to the cradle of civilization, now scarred by civil war and global headlines. Tajikistan. Mountains for days, and a president who once made the national anthem mandatory in ringtones. Isolation with altitude. Tanzania. Lions, Kilimanjaro, and the Serengeti. A tourist fantasy with real struggles under the surface. Thailand. Tuk-tuks, temples, and the monarchy you don't question out loud. It's chaos, beauty, and flavor overload. Togo. Narrow and squeezed between neighbors, but full of spiritual weight. Voodoo here isn't Halloween, it's heritage. Tonga. The only Pacific kingdom never colonized. Time rebels. They see the new year before almost anyone else. Trinidad and Tobago. Steel drums, carnival heat, and an oil economy with rhythm and corruption in equal measure. Tunisia, where Star Wars became Tatooine. Ancient ruins, mint tea, and political plot twists since the Arab Spring. Turkey, where empires collide and Erdogan rebrands history. Istanbul alone is a clash of continents, cultures, and ideologies. Turkmenistan, gas-rich and reality-poor. The capital looks like a Sims game run by a megalomaniac, golden statues included. Tuvalu, a few islands, barely above sea level, fighting climate change with a Wi-Fi signal and diplomacy. Blink, and it might be gone. Uganda. The Nile starts here, and so do countless species of birds, gorillas, and absurd political quotes. Ukraine. Fields of wheat turned frontlines. A country refusing to break, no matter the cost. United Arab Emirates. Oil money turned into air-conditioned skyscrapers. Lavish, flashy, where tomorrow is always under construction. United Kingdom. Once owned half the planet. Now sipping tea, debating the weather, and trying to figure out life after empire. United States. World's loudest soap opera. Billionaires to bankrupts, space launches to school shootings. Always in the headlines. Uruguay. The chillest place in South America. Legal weed, renewable energy, and a former president who drove a beat-up Volkswagen. Uzbekistan. Silk Road glam, authoritarian rules, and architectural flexing. Samarkand isn't a city, it's a history fever dream. Vanuatu. Island storms, earthquakes, and people jumping from towers with vines. Old ways still strong. Venezuela. From the world's tallest waterfall to an economy that nosedived so hard, people collect trillion-dollar bills like postcards. Vietnam. War-torn and now wired. Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh. It's scooters, street food, and serious ambition. Yemen. A tragic postcard. UNESCO-worthy cities being shelled daily, where history and suffering blend too closely. Zambia. Victoria Falls is its pride. Copper is its income. But poverty still whispers behind the roar of the waterfall. Zimbabwe. Once richer than its neighbors, then hyperinflation turned trillion-dollar notes into souvenirs. Now it's game parks, gold mines, and a people still hustling for tomorrow. If you liked this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more.